Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving deep into national income.
Oh, yeah.
It impacts all of us, whether we realize it or not.
Mm-hmm.
You've sent in an academic excerpt that breaks down how this whole system works.
Okay.
And I learned a bunch just skimming through it.
Wow.
Like the secret code behind how economies work,
Uh-huh.
which means by the end of this, you'll have a better grasp on everything
Oh,
from
wow.
those confusing economic headlines
Yeah.
to maybe even your own investment choices.
What's fascinating is that national income is often compared to the heartbeat of a nation.
Oh, interesting.
It's essentially a measure of all the goods and services a country produces,
Okay.
telling us how well its economy is doing,
Uh-huh.
and even hinting at the overall well-being of its people.
Okay, so it's not just some abstract number.
Right.
It actually tells us something about how folks are doing out in the real world.
Exactly.
Our source material really emphasizes this idea of a circular flow of income.
Mm-hmm.
I'm picturing money, goods, and services dipping around between different parts of the economy,
Yeah.
almost like a never-ending game of hot potato.
That's a great analogy. We can imagine households like you and me providing labor and buying stuff,
Right.
while firms are the businesses using that labor to produce those goods and services. Money is constantly moving back and forth between them.
Right, so it's this constant exchange between these two big players.
Yeah,
But hold on, what about the government? Don't they have a hand in this whole economic dance, too?
absolutely. Governments collect taxes from both households and firms
Okay.
and use that money to fund public services
Okay.
like education, healthcare, even building roads and bridges.
Right?
And then there's the rest of the world,
Yeah.
impacting the flow through international trade with countries buying and selling stuff to each other.
Wow. So it's way more interconnected than I initially thought.
It is.
It's not just about me buying groceries or getting a paycheck.
Yeah.
There are all these other forces at play.
Exactly.
Now, our source material mentions something called injections and leakages in the economy.
Yes.
What exactly are those? Do they
Uh,
involve giant needles or something?
Thankfully, no giant needles involved. Think of injection as boosts to the circular flow.
Okay.
Investments from businesses, government projects, money coming in from exports, those all pump up national income.
Okay.
Leakages, on the other hand, are like drains on the system.
Oh, okay.
Savings tucked away, taxes paid, imports taking money out of the country.
Okay, I'm starting to get the picture.
Good.
So what happens if these injections and leakages are out of balance?
Oh,
Like, if we have way more leakages than injections, does that mean the economy's in trouble?
that's exactly right. When leakages are greater than injections, the economy can shrink.
Right.
National income drops, and we might even head into a recession.
Oh, wow.
On the flip side, if injections outweigh the leakages, we tend to see expansion and economic growth.
This makes me think about the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact it had on the UK economy.
Mm-hmm.
With everyone locked down, people weren't spending as much,
Right.
businesses were hesitant to invest, and international trade took a big hit.
Yes.
Sounds like a classic case of excessive leakage, right?
A textbook example, really. The pandemic was a stark reminder of how events can disrupt the delicate balance of this circular flow.
Mm-hmm.
And because everything is interconnected, one sector struggling can quickly ripple through the entire system.
That's a sobering thought, but it also highlights why understanding this stuff is so important.
Absolutely.
It's like knowing the warning signs before your car breaks down, right?
Precisely. Now, understanding the flow is one thing, but how do we actually measure something as vast as national income?
Right.
Economists use a few methods,
Okay.
but the most common one involves calculating the gross domestic product, or GDP.
Oh, yeah?
You might have seen that term thrown around in the news.
I definitely have, but I'll be honest, I never fully understood what it actually meant.
Uh-huh.
Is it just like adding up everyone's salaries or something?
It's a bit more nuanced than that. The expenditure approach to calculating GDP focuses on the total spending in the economy.
Right.
Remember, every dollar spent is a dollar earned by someone else.
Mm-hmm.
We can break it down with a simple formula. GDP equals C plus I plus G plus XM.
Hold on, let's break that down so I don't accidentally skip past the most important part.
Sure.
What does each piece of that formula represent?
C stands for consumer spending, like your grocery shopping or that new gadget you just had to have.
Okay.
I is investment, money spent by businesses on things like new equipment or expanding their factories.
Okay.
G is government spending, like those public services we talked about earlier.
Uh-huh.
And XM represent net exports, basically the difference between what we sell to other countries and what we buy from them.
Okay, that makes way more sense than just seeing a jumble of letters.
Right.
So by adding up all those components, we get a snapshot of the total spending in the economy.
Yes.
And that's our GDP.
Exactly. It gives us a good idea of how much economic activity is happening within a country.
Okay.
But even GDP has its limitations.
Really, if it's the go-to measure, What's the catch?
Well,
It can't tell us everything, can it?
you're absolutely right. GDP is helpful, but it's not a perfect picture of a country's well-being. For instance, it doesn't capture income inequality.
Right.
So two countries with the same GDP could have vastly different levels of wealth distribution.
That's interesting. So are there other ways to measure well-being that economists are exploring?
There are.
Things that might give us a more complete picture beyond just the dollars and cents.
There's a growing field focused on alternative measures that factor in things like environmental sustainability and social well-being.
Hmm.
But for now, GDP remains a key indicator, though we always need to consider its limitations.
Makes sense. It's like relying solely on your speedometer to assess the health of your car. Important, but not the whole story. So while GDP is a big piece of the puzzle, what are some other fascinating aspects of national income that we should be aware of?
Well, there's this fascinating concept called the multiplier effect.
Okay.
You know the saying, a rising tide lifts all boats?
Yeah.
It captures the essence of how an initial injection of spending can create a much larger wave of economic activity.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Is this like some secret economic superpower that makes money magically multiply?
Not magic, but it's definitely powerful. The multiplier effect describes how one person's spending becomes another's income,
Right.
leading to even more spending and so on.
Okay.
Imagine the government decides to build a new bridge.
Okay.
This creates jobs for construction workers, engineers, and suppliers, right?
Right. And those folks now have more money in their pocket.
Exactly. And what do they do with that extra income?
Spend it.
They spend it at local businesses, maybe buy groceries, get a haircut, or even treat themselves to a new pair of shoes.
Right. This increased demand leads businesses to hire more workers, produce more goods, and the cycle continues.
So that initial investment in the bridge sparked a chain reaction that boosted the entire local economy. That's pretty cool, but is there a way to actually measure how big this ripple effect is?
There is. We can estimate the multiplier using a formula based on the marginal propensity to consume, or MPC.
MPC, okay.
It's basically the portion of extra income that people spend rather than save.
Okay.
So if someone gets an extra $100 and spends $80, their MPC is 0.8.
So the more people spend, the bigger the multiplier effect. Does that mean I should be hitting the shops more often? I'm doing my part for the economy, right?
Well, responsible spending is always a good idea. But the multiplier effect is more about understanding the overall dynamics of the economy. A higher MPC does indeed lead to a larger multiplier.
Right.
Think about it. If everyone saves all their extra cash, it doesn't really circulate and boost economic activity.
Makes sense. So government policies like stimulus packages, those are basically trying to harness this multiplier effect, right? Uh-huh.
To jumpstart the economy during a recession.
Exactly. The idea is to inject money into the system, boost spending, and trigger that chain reaction we talked about.
Okay.
It's like giving the economy a little nudge to that things moving again.
I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together. But before we move on, I'm curious about another term from our source material. Aggregate demand and aggregate supply.
Yeah.
Are those as intimidating as they sound?
They might sound complex, but they're essentially the forces that determine the overall level of national income in an economy. Aggregate demand is the total spending,
Okay.
and aggregate supply is the total production of goods and services.
Okay, so it's like a giant economic tug of war between how much everyone wants to buy and how much we can actually produce.
Exactly. Imagine the housing market.
Okay.
If lots of people want to buy homes, but there aren't many houses available, prices skyrocket, right?
Right.
That's high aggregate demand and low aggregate supply leading to inflation.
Ah, so that's what drives those crazy housing prices, like too many dollars chasing too few houses. But what happens if the opposite is true, if supply is much higher than demand?
That can lead to deflation where prices fall.
Okay.
While cheaper stuff might sound good at first, it can actually be a bad sign for the economy. If businesses aren't making enough profit, they might cut back on production, lay off workers, and that can trigger a downward spiral.
So it's all about finding that sweet spot, that Goldilocks zone where demand and supply are balanced, leading to stable prices and healthy economic growth.
Precisely. And speaking of growth, our source material really digs into the whole concept of national income growth.
Okay.
On the surface, it seems like a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
More wealth, better living standards, right?
Yeah, that's what I always assumed. More money means a better life for everyone, doesn't it?
Well, it's not always that simple. There are definitely advantages to national income growth.
Okay.
It usually leads to improved living standards, better health care, access to education, more leisure time, and so on.
That's what I always thought. A bigger economic pie means everyone gets a bigger slice.
And it often means more job opportunities as businesses expand to meet growing demand.
Okay.
This lowers unemployment and gives people a chance to earn a living and contribute to the economy.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, a bigger economy means more tax revenue for the government,
Right.
which can then be used to fund public services, further improving lives.
So it's like a win-win-win for everyone. But I know you said it's not that simple. Are there hidden downsides to national income growth that we should be aware of?
There are a few things to consider. One potential downside is inflationary pressure. If demand grows too quickly and outstrips supply, prices can start to climb rapidly.
Right.
This erodes the purchasing power of your savings, so even if you have more money, it doesn't buy as much as it used to.
That makes sense. It's not just about the amount of money, but what you can actually do with it. What are some other potential downsides?
Absolutely. Another concern is widening income inequality. Sometimes the benefits of economic growth aren't evenly distributed, leading to a situation where the rich get richer while others struggle to keep up.
Yeah, I've heard that called the Matthew effect. Like the rich keep getting more while those who are already struggling fall further behind. That doesn't sound good for social stability.
Exactly. It can create social unrest and even undermine long-term economic growth.
Okay.
And then there's the environmental impact. Sometimes rapid economic growth comes at the expense of our planet.
That makes sense. You can't have unlimited growth on a finite planet, can you?
Exactly. Think about China.
Okay.
They've experienced remarkable economic growth,
Yeah,
but it's come with a heavy environmental cost.
right.
Pollution, deforestation, resource depletion, these are all serious challenges.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we need to pursue sustainable growth that doesn't sacrifice our environment for short-term gains.
So it's not just about growing the economy, it's about growing it in a way that benefits both people and the planet. Sounds like a real balancing act for policymakers. But what can we as individuals do with all this knowledge about national income? How can we use it in our own lives?
Well, understanding these concepts helps you decode the economic news. Instead of just hearing about GDP going up or down, you'll be able to think about what's driving those changes and how they might affect you personally.
It's like having X-ray vision for the economy. Instead of just seeing the surface, we can understand what's happening beneath.
Exactly. And it empowers you to be a more informed citizen. You can start asking critical questions about economic policies. Are they sustainable? Are they inclusive? Are they addressing issues like income inequality and climate change?
It's about taking ownership of our economic future, not just passively accepting whatever happens.
Exactly. And don't forget about your personal finances.
Oh, right.
Understanding things like inflation can help you make smarter decisions about savings and investments. It's all connected.
Wow, this deep dive has been eye-opening. We've explored the inner workings of national income, learned about its benefits and pitfalls, and even discovered how it connects to our daily lives.
It's been a fascinating journey. And remember, economics is all around us. It's not just about numbers and theories. It's about understanding the choices we make and how those choices shape the world we live in.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So as we wrap up, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. What factors do you think will influence national income growth in the coming years? What trends should we be paying attention to?
That's a great question to ponder as we look ahead. One trend to watch is the rise of automation and artificial intelligence. These technologies have the potential to boost productivity and create new industries, but they could also disrupt jobs if we're not prepared.
It's like we're on the cusp of a technological revolution, but we need to make sure everyone benefits from it, not just a select few.
Absolutely. And speaking of global shifts, the geopolitical landscape is constantly evolving. Trade wars, political instability, emerging markets, these can all have ripple effects on national income growth. It's a reminder that economies are interconnected, and what happens in one part of the world can affect us all.
It's like a giant game of economic Jenga. You pull out the wrong piece and the whole thing could come crashing down.
A vivid analogy. And let's not forget about demographics. Aging populations in developed countries and rapidly growing populations in developing countries will both present unique challenges and opportunities. How we manage these demographic shifts will be crucial for future economic growth.
It seems like there's a lot to consider, but amidst all these complex trends, is there anything that gives you hope for the future?
Absolutely. I'm optimistic about the growing awareness of sustainability. More and more people are realizing that we need to balance economic growth with environmental protection and social well-being. This shift in mindset is encouraging, and it's driving innovation in areas like renewable energy and circular economies.
That's definitely a hopeful sign. It sounds like we have the potential to create a more sustainable and equitable future. but it's going to require conscious effort and collaboration.
Couldn't agree more. It's a call to action for all of us policymakers, businesses, and individuals alike to make responsible choices and work together to build a better future.
Well said. This deep dive has been incredibly insightful. We've gone from understanding the basics of national income to grappling with complex questions about sustainability, equity, and the future of our economies. It's been quite a journey.
It's been a pleasure sharing this journey with you. Remember, economics is a fascinating and ever-evolving field. Stay curious, keep learning, and use this knowledge to navigate the world around you and make informed decisions.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into national income. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking those thought-provoking questions.